I need to tell someone what happened between me and my stepbrother. And I know you're going to judge me. I know you're going to think I should have stopped, that I should have said no, that I should have kept my distance. But the truth is that by the third time, I already knew it wasn't an accident. And still, I couldn't stop. My name is Lucas. I'm 21 years old. And this is the story of how I discovered something about myself that I wasn't ready to accept. Have you ever felt like you were living a perfectly normal life until a single person came along and turned everything upside down? I'm not talking about love at first sight. I'm talking about something more confusing, more forbidden, more impossible to explain to anyone who hasn't been through it. Before everything happened, my life was simple. I lived with my mom in a small but comfortable apartment. She worked a lot. I was finishing college, and our routine was peaceful, predictable, safe, until she met Roberto. Roberto was divorced, had a 23-year-old son, and from what my mom told me, he was a kind man who treated her with the respect my father never had. I was happy for her. I really was. She deserved to be happy after so many years alone, taking care of me, working double shifts to pay the bills. When they decided to get married 6 months after meeting, I didn't question it. My mom was radiant. She had that sparkle in her eyes that I hadn't seen since I was a child. And when Roberto suggested we all move into his house, a bigger house, with separate rooms for me and for Mateus, his son, it seemed like the natural choice. Mateus. I knew his name before meeting him. My mom talked about him sometimes, always saying he was polite, responsible, worked in graphic design, and had his own place for a couple of years. But he agreed to move back to his dad's house to help smooth things over with the new family setup. At the time, I thought it was a really selfless move on his part. I wasn't expecting anything when we met. I really wasn't. It was on a Sunday morning, a week before the wedding. My mom and Roberto had organized a lunch so that Mateus and I could meet before living under the same roof. I remember I was nervous. I don't know why. Maybe because I'd always had trouble with new people, or because I knew the dynamics of my life were about to change completely. When the doorbell rang and I opened the door, my brain just froze. Matthew was standing there, in a light blue shirt that brought out his eyes, dark jeans, hair kind of messy in a way that seemed intentional. He smiled, extended his hand and said, "Hey, you must be Lucas. Good to meet you. I'm Matthew." I shook his hand. I felt the warmth of his palm against mine, and something strange happened in my stomach. A kind of tightness, a falling sensation, like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet for a split second. I said hi back, or I think I did. My voice came out kind of hoarse, kind of shaky, and I had to clear my throat to cover it up. The lunch was strange, not because of my mom or Roberto. They were happy, chatting excitedly about plans for the wedding, about the honeymoon, about how good it would be to have the whole family together. But I could barely eat. I kept staring at my plate, pushing the food from one side to the other, while my brain waged an internal war. Why was I so nervous? Why couldn't I stop noticing every little thing? The way Matthew held his fork, the way he tilted his head when he listened to someone talk, the sound of his laugh, deep and warm, that made my chest tight every time I heard it. This was wrong. I knew it was wrong. He was going to be my stepbrother. In a week, we'd be living in the same house, sharing the same space, sharing breakfast, the bathroom, the living room. And I couldn't, under any circumstances, be feeling what I was feeling. After the wedding, the move happened fast. My mom and Roberto were too caught up in their excitement to notice any tension. And Matthew, at least on the surface, seemed completely fine with the new family dynamic. He helped me carry boxes to my room, joked about how many books I had, gave me the tour of the house. He was kind, polite. He kept a respectful but friendly distance. And I, on the other hand, was an internal mess. I tried to avoid being alone with him. When he came into a room, I'd find some reason to leave. When he suggested watching a movie, I'd say I had to study. I figured if I kept my distance, this weird feeling would eventually fade. That it was just a phase. Just some temporary confusion from the sudden upheaval in my life. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more his presence affected me. I started noticing things. Small things. The way he ran his hand through his hair when he was focused on the computer. The smell of his soap that lingered in the air after he left the bathroom. The sound of his footsteps in the hallway at night, when he went to his room. I would lie awake listening, and hate myself for it. The house had a shared bathroom between our bedrooms. It was one of those practical arrangements that made sense in the floor plan, but it had become torture for me. Because every time I needed to use the bathroom, I had to walk down the hallway, stay just a few feet from his bedroom door, and pray I wouldn't run into him along the way. Until one night, 3 weeks after the move, it happened. It was almost 11 at night. I was in my room, trying to read a textbook for college, but I couldn't focus. My mind was somewhere else. On the sound of his voice through the wall, talking on the phone, on his laugh that drifted through occasionally. I needed to shower. I'd been putting it off because I knew Matthew was still up, but I was all sweaty and gross, and eventually I got too uncomfortable to care. I grabbed my towel, went to the bathroom, locked the door. At least that's what I thought I'd done. I took off my clothes, turned on the shower, stepped under the hot water. I closed my eyes and tried to relax. I let the water run down my face, down my shoulders, washing away some of the built-up tension. That's when I heard the door opening. My heart stopped. I turned my head, eyes still half closed from the water, and saw Matthew standing in the bathroom doorway. He had his hand on the doorknob, eyes wide, mouth half open in a silent "oh" of surprise. For a second, neither of us moved. The shower curtain was frosted, not see-through, but you could still make out shapes, silhouettes. I could see his outline against the hallway light, and he could see mine. Time seemed to freeze. It was maybe 2-3 seconds max, but it felt like forever. I watched his eyes move across my silhouette, saw the exact moment it hit him what he was seeing, saw the color rise up his neck, flooding his face. "Sorry," he yelled, his voice way too loud. "I thought the door wasn't locked. I didn't know you were." He didn't finish, just bolted, slamming the door harder than necessary. I stood there, frozen under the shower, with the water falling over me, my heart beating so hard I could hear my pulse hammering in my ears. What had just happened? I turned off the shower with trembling hands, dried off in a rush, got dressed, and went back to my room almost running, locked the door, threw myself on the bed. And then I realized. I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry. I was aroused. The way he had looked at me, that second of hesitation before looking away, the way his voice had cracked when he tried to apologize. I ran my hand over my face, trying to push the thoughts away. This was wrong. This was completely wrong. Matthew was my stepbrother. We lived in the same house. Our parents were married. There couldn't be anything but a fraternal relationship between us. Nothing. But my body wasn't listening to logic. That night, I barely slept. I tossed and turned, replaying that moment over and over. The door opening, his eyes locking with mine. That blush spreading across his face. Had he felt something like I did? No. Not possible. He was just embarrassed, mortified for walking in on me. That was all it was. I tried to believe that, but I couldn't. The next day, we avoided each other. When we crossed paths in the hallway, he looked away. When we sat down for breakfast, he stayed silent, scrolling on his phone. My mom noticed and asked if everything was okay, and Matthew made up some excuse about work. But I knew the truth. Something had changed between us that night. An invisible line had been crossed, and as much as I wanted to pretend nothing had happened, as much as I wanted to go back to the safe routine from before, I knew I couldn't anymore, because I couldn't stop thinking about him. And worse, I had the feeling he couldn't stop thinking about me either. I tried to convince myself it didn't mean anything, that it had just been an embarrassing accident that would soon be forgotten. But then, 2 days later, I was trying to act normal. Trying. But how do you act normal when every room in the house reminds you of him? When the sound of his footsteps in the hallway makes your heart race? When you look away every time your eyes meet? I was avoiding him. Consciously. Deliberately. As if keeping physical distance could erase that moment in the bathroom. As if not looking at him could make my body forget the feeling of closeness. Spoiler. It didn't work. That night, there was a family dinner. My mom had made that lasagna she loves to make when she wants to impress, and everyone was sitting at the table. Me, my mom, my stepdad, and him, Matthew, on the other side of the table, directly in my line of sight. I fixed my eyes on my plate, counted each layer of pasta, memorized the pattern of the sauce, anything to avoid looking up. But I felt it, felt the weight of his gaze, that charged silence between us while my mom and stepdad talked about work, about bills, about nothing that mattered. And then it happened. My mom made a joke. One of those mom jokes that nobody finds funny, but everyone pretends is funny. My stepdad laughed politely. I looked up without thinking, and there he was, looking at me, with that half smile, that knowing look of someone who also found the joke unfunny, but at the same time was saying something more, something only the two of us understood. I smiled back, just for a second, but it was enough to make my heart race. And that's when I realized this wasn't going away. This feeling wouldn't disappear just because I wanted it to. Because it was wrong. Because it was complicated. Why can't I stop thinking about him? That question consumed me for the next few days. I tried to tell myself it was just curiosity. Just the novelty of having someone my age around. Just loneliness, maybe. Any explanation that made sense. But the truth was that I'd never felt this way before. Not about the girls my friends pushed on me. Not about anyone. And that terrified me. Because I knew what it meant. I knew it, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Wasn't ready to name it, to deal with the fallout. We lived in the same house. He was my stepbrother now. My mom had just found a stability she'd never had, and I was feeling things that could destroy all of that. So I pulled away even more. Started going out more. Staying in my room with the door closed. Putting on headphones even with no music playing, just to have an excuse not to talk. But the house wasn't big enough. There wasn't enough distance when you live under the same roof. It was almost midnight when I went downstairs for water. The house was dark, quiet. I figured I was alone. I was wrong. He was there. In the kitchen. Sitting on the counter with a cup of cold coffee, staring at nothing. The microwave light was the only thing lighting up his face, creating shadows I'd already committed to memory without trying. I could have left. Should have left. But I didn't. Can't sleep? He spoke first, breaking the silence. Me neither. My voice came out lower than I intended, like a whisper, like a secret. He smiled a little. Sit. Keep me company. Misery loves company, right? I should have said no. Should have grabbed my water and headed back upstairs. But my feet had other ideas. Moved me toward him. Made me sit on the counter, just a few inches away. Is it hard adjusting? I asked, needing to fill the silence that was starting to feel heavy. He laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was one of those tired laughs, full of unspoken truths. You have no idea. Tell me. And he did. He told me how hard it was leaving everything. Friends. The school he'd spent the last 3 years at. His own bedroom. The life he knew. My dad figured it'd be better. A fresh start. But I think he just wanted his new family, and I don't fit into his old life anymore. There was something in his voice. A kind of raw honesty that cracked something in me, because I got it. That feeling of not fitting, of having no say, of having to smile and act like everything's fine when you're screaming inside. I understand. And I did, more than he knew. He turned to me. Our eyes met in that dim kitchen light. And for the first time, I didn't look away. Really? His voice was soft. Because sometimes I look at you and I think we're feeling the same loneliness. Just alone together. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he'd hear it. That moment was dangerous. Too real. Too intimate. Yeah. My voice came out barely audible. I think we are. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, full of things neither of us was ready to say. I could feel the warmth of his body, That physical closeness that shouldn't mean anything but meant everything. He reached out his hand, slowly, like he was testing boundaries, and touched my arm. Just that. A light touch. Casual. But it burned my skin like fire. "I'm glad you're here," he said. And there was something in his eyes. Something that mirrored what I was feeling. Something that said maybe. Maybe this wasn't just me. I was going to respond. Going to say something. Anything. But then we heard footsteps upstairs. We both pulled away instantly. Like we'd been caught doing something wrong. And maybe we had. "Matthew?" My stepdad's voice echoed down the stairs. "You down there?" "Yeah, just grabbing some water," he answered, his voice flipping back to normal. Like nothing just went down. Like the past 10 minutes hadn't just turned everything upside down. I left the kitchen before my stepfather came down, ran upstairs to my room, closed the door, and leaned against it, trying to control my breathing. He was feeling this too. It wasn't just me. It wasn't my imagination. That touch. That look. "I'm glad you're here," the way he said it. The way he looked at me. He was feeling this too. And that made everything infinitely more complicated. Because when it's just you feeling it, you can ignore it. Can pretend it doesn't exist. Can bury it deep and move on. But when it's mutual, when you know the other person feels the same, then you can't pretend. Then you have to face it, have to make decisions. I spent the next few days in a constant state of hypervigilance. Every time we crossed paths in the hallways, I felt that electricity, that unresolved tension, like a conversation paused mid-sentence, waiting to be continued. And the house that was already small began to feel tiny. Every space was charged. The living room where we watched TV with my mom and stepdad, but where our eyes met over our phones. The hallway where our shoulders touched when we passed each other. The stairs where I went up and he came down, and for a second we'd stop, very close, very aware. It was sweet torture, a kind of suffering I didn't want to end because it meant closeness. It meant he was there, that this was happening. But it also meant conflict, moral conflict, family conflict. Because how do you deal with feelings for someone who's your family now? Someone who lives in the same house, shares the same dinner table, is part of your life in a way that should be simple, but is becoming impossible to ignore. I had no answers, only questions, and fear. So much fear. Fear that this would go wrong. Fear that it would go right. Fear that my mom would find out. Fear of what my stepdad would think. Fear that I was destroying the family before it even had a chance to form. But most of all, I was afraid of myself, of what I was feeling, of what it meant about who I was. Because accepting it, accepting that I felt something for him, meant accepting other truths too. Truths I'd swept under the rug for years. Truths about myself I wasn't ready to face. And then came that night. I was in my room, studying, or at least pretending to study, because my mind was anywhere but in the books. It was late, almost 10. My mom and stepdad had already gone to bed, and then there was a knock on the door. "You busy?" His voice, low, hesitant. My heart raced. "No, come in." He opened the door slowly, came in, closed it behind him, and stood there, leaning against the door, hands in his pockets, as if he didn't quite know what to do. "Sorry to bother you. I was looking for my charger. Thought I might have left it here when we set up the computer last week." It was a lie. We both knew it was a lie, because the computer had been set up in the living room. It had never come near my bedroom. But I let it slide. "Oh, go ahead and look." He made a token search, looked around, but he wasn't really searching. He was just there, present, filling the space. And then he sat down, on my bed, next to me. So close I could feel the warmth of his body. So close that if I moved my hand a few inches, our fingers would touch. "This room is pretty different from mine," he said, looking around. But his eyes came back to me. They always came back to me. "It's smaller," I answered because I needed to say something, anything. "But it has you," he said. And the way he said it wasn't casual, wasn't innocent. The air became thick, heavy, full of possibilities. I turned to him, and he was already looking at me. And this time there was no denying it, no pretending. It was all there, in his gaze, in mine, in that minimal space between us that was getting smaller by the second. He raised his hand, slowly, hesitantly, as if giving me time to pull back, to say no, to stop this before it went too far. But I didn't pull back. His fingers touched my face. Light, warm, and I closed my eyes, allowing myself to feel, just feel. "I don't know what's happening," he whispered, "but I can't stop thinking about you." I opened my eyes, and I saw fear. I saw confusion. But I also saw truth. I saw the same whirlwind that was inside me reflected in his eyes. "Me too." Those were the only words I could say, but they were enough. He moved closer, inch by inch, and I could feel my heart beating so hard, so fast, it felt like it would leap out of my chest. I could feel his breath mixing with mine. I could see every detail of his face, so close, so real. And then, "Matthias, you there?" My stepdad's voice, from the hallway, calling. We both froze, like statues, as if not breathing would make us disappear. "Coming," he answered, and his voice trembled. Just a little, but it trembled. He stood up, quickly, pulled away as if he'd been shocked. And for a second, he just stood there looking at me, as if he wanted to say something, do something, finish what we'd started. But he couldn't. Not there. Not in that moment. "Good night," he said, and left. The door closed, and I was alone, sitting on my bed, with my heart still racing, with my skin still burning where he'd touched. And I knew with absolute certainty. It wasn't just attraction, it wasn't just curiosity. It was something bigger, something deeper, something that couldn't be ignored or swept under the rug. He felt the same, and that changed everything. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, reliving every second, every word, every touch, every look. And when I finally closed my eyes, in the early morning hours, dawn already breaking, I dreamed. I dreamed about what could have happened if that door hadn't opened, if that moment hadn't been interrupted. I dreamed of possibilities, of truths, of choices I would have to make sooner or later. Because one thing was certain, this wasn't going away. It wouldn't disappear just because it was complicated, just because it was scary. And at some point I would have to decide. Keep hiding, keep pretending, or risk everything. Risk the family, the stability, the security. Risk everything for a truth that was burning inside me, begging to be lived. And as I drifted off to sleep, exhausted, confused, but strangely hopeful, one last question echoed in my mind. What if I let this happen? What would come next? The next morning, I woke up with my body aching, as if I had fought with sleep all night long and lost. The sheets were twisted, the pillow on the floor, and my heart still beat to the accelerated rhythm of the dreams that had chased me until dawn. I couldn't keep pretending nothing was happening. Not after that night. Not after feeling the weight of his body pressing against mine. Not after understanding that all those accidents had stopped being accidental a long time ago. I went downstairs for breakfast, feeling like I was walking off a cliff. My mom was talking about her birthday party coming up, but her words sounded muffled, like I was underwater. Then he came into the kitchen. Our eyes locked for a second, maybe two, but that was enough to see he hadn't slept either. The dark circles under his eyes said it all. The way his fingers were white-knuckling his coffee cup. He sat across from me, but even with that distance, I could feel the tension between us ready to snap. Every look he threw my way held weight, an unspoken question, barely contained need. And I knew, with absolute certainty that both scared and relieved me, that we couldn't keep doing this. The morning dragged on agonizingly. I tried to focus on work, on the lesson plans I needed to finish for Monday, but my brain kept circling back to the same thing. That dark room, that kiss, that feeling of actually living for once in my life. And the longer I sat with it, the clearer one thing became. I had to talk to him. No matter how scared I was, no matter what happened, I couldn't keep living like this. Stuck between wanting him and pretending I didn't. I spent the afternoon practicing what to say. We need to talk about what happened. Too blunt. I know you felt it too. Too presumptuous. Those accidents. Cowardly. Every version felt like it wasn't enough. Couldn't hold what I was actually feeling. How do you say something that terrifies and completes you all at once? But he got to me first. I was out on the porch getting some air when I heard the sliding glass door open. I didn't need to look to know it was him. My whole body just knew. Every nerve lit up. Can we talk? His voice was low, barely a whisper, but steady. Somewhere private? My heart was racing. I turned to face him, and he didn't pull away. There was resolve in his eyes and fear, and something else I couldn't quite name that made everything in me tighten. My room, I said, surprised by the firmness of my own voice. 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes were the longest of my life. I went up those stairs on wobbly legs, went into my room, and for the first time since we moved in, I actually locked the door. Not an accident this time. Intentional. A statement. When he knocked, my heart was so loud I thought he'd hear it from the hallway. I let him in, and he came through quickly, immediately checking to make sure the door was locked. The air between us was thick, electric, like a storm about to break. We stood there, maybe 6 feet apart, but it felt like miles. He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous thing I'd seen him do 100 times, but now it looked so vulnerable. He started, then stopped, biting his lip. He took a breath. I think we need to stop pretending those weren't intentional. The honesty of that hit me hard. There was no taking it back. No more hiding. The truth was out there now. Unavoidable. Yeah, I said, my voice coming out raw. I don't think they were accidents either. He took a step toward me. Just one. But it was as if all the invisible barriers we had built between us began to crumble. The shower, he said, and his voice had that raw edge. The movie. Last night, He closed his eyes like he was gathering strength. I can't stop thinking about you. And it's destroying me because this shouldn't be happening. You're my brother, our family, everything. But I can't. Every word sounded ripped from his gut, and I heard my own fears and confusion and desperate need reflected right back at me. I wasn't the only one feeling this. That realization hit me like nothing else. Same, I whispered, and my voice broke. I keep you awake at night in my head. I find ways to be near you. I breathed in, tears starting to burn my eyes. For so long I didn't understand who I was. I felt wrong, broken. And then you got here and suddenly, for the first time, I felt whole. That moment was overwhelming. Two scared men laying it all bare, risking everything. But in the middle of that exposure, something amazing was happening. We were actually letting each other see us. I'm terrified, he admitted, and tears were streaming now. Terrified of what this is, of what people will think, of what happens to our family. Me too, I said, and I moved toward him, closing the space between us. Absolutely terrified. But you know what scares me worse. I looked straight at him. Living my whole life pretending I don't feel you. We were so close now, close enough to feel the heat off him, close enough that our heartbeats seemed to sync. His racing, mine racing, both of us racing. Can I? He asked. And there was something so honest in that question, so careful and yet so desperate that it broke through everything I had left. I didn't say anything. I just closed the distance and kissed him the first time with no excuses, no accidents. Just the two of us choosing this. It wasn't rushed, wasn't stolen. It was slow and deliberate. Something we were choosing together. Soft at first. Tentative. Like we were testing if this was even real. Then something gave way inside us, and all those weeks of tension, all that denial and need, finally broke free. His hands were on my face, pulling me closer, while I held his shirt like it was keeping me from drowning. The kiss got deeper, more desperate, and I felt years of shame and fear melting away with each second. For the first time ever, I wasn't playing someone else. For the first time, I was just me. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against mine and closed his eyes. I stayed there, feeling the weight of that moment, the magnitude of what we had just done. There was no way to undo this. No way to go back. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He opened his eyes, and what I saw there was a mixture of fear, relief, and something that looked dangerously like love. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I can't pretend this didn't happen. I don't want to pretend. Me neither." We stayed there a while longer, embraced, as if the world outside could wait just a little longer. But of course it couldn't. Reality began to seep back in gradually. We were two men who had just crossed a line that society, that our family, that everything around us said shouldn't be crossed. When we finally separated, the atmosphere in the room had changed. It was no longer that charged sexual tension from before. It was something deeper, more complex. It was the awareness of what we had started and everything it meant. "This needs to stay between us," he said, and there was pain in those words. "At least for now, until we figure out, until we know how." "I know," I said, even though those words hurt. Because he was right. We couldn't just go downstairs and announce to the world that we had fallen in love with each other. The complications were endless, terrifying. He kissed me again, softer this time, almost a promise. "I don't regret it," he whispered against my lips. Me neither. And it was true. Despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, despite all the logical reasons why this was a bad idea, I didn't regret it. For the first time in my life, I had chosen my happiness. I had chosen my truth. But as he left the room, checking the hallway before disappearing downstairs, a new wave of fear hit me. Because now this was real. It was no longer fantasy, no longer unresolved tension. It was a relationship, secret and complicated and potentially destructive to everything we knew. I sat on the bed, still tasting him on my lips, still feeling the warmth of his body in my arms. And a terrible truth settled in my chest. We both knew this was just the beginning, but neither of us really understood what we were risking. Not yet. Downstairs, I could hear my mom laughing at something on TV, happy and oblivious to the earthquake that had just happened in her son's room. And I wondered, how long could we keep this secret? And when the truth inevitably came out, what would be left of us? But for now, in that moment suspended between confession and consequences, I allowed myself just to feel. Feel the fear, yes. Feel the uncertainty, absolutely. But also feel, for the first time in so long, something that looked dangerously like hope. The first few days were the hardest. Not because I didn't know what I felt for him, that had never been clearer in my life, but because every glance, every gesture, every word had to be calculated. We lived under the same roof, shared breakfast with my mom, watched TV with my dad on the living room couch. And all that time, we carried a secret that burned inside, begging to be released. We created our own language. A seemingly innocent text message. "I need your help with a college assignment," meant, "Meet me in my room when everyone's asleep." A glance that lasted half a second too long at the dinner table meant, "I miss you, even though I'm right here beside you." A discreet smile when passing each other in the hallway meant, "I love you, even though I can't say it out loud." The early morning hours became our ally. When the house finally fell silent, When the hallway lights went out one by one, when I heard my parents' footsteps fading toward their bedroom, my heart would race. I'd wait 10 minutes, 15, 20, to be absolutely certain. And then I'd hear it, so quietly it barely seemed real. The door of the room next to mine opening with that almost imperceptible creak I had memorized. 3 soft knocks on my door. Our password. Our signal that it was safe. In those stolen hours of the night, sitting on my bedroom floor with our backs against the bed, we'd whisper about everything. About who we were before we met each other. About the fears we'd carried alone for so long. About how strange and liberating it felt to finally be authentic with someone. "Did you always know?" he asked one of those nights, his voice so low I had to lean in to hear. "I think so," I replied, running my fingers over his with a tenderness that seemed to protect that moment from shattering. But knowing and accepting are different things. Knowing is easy, accepting hurts, because it means admitting you're not who everyone expects you to be. He squeezed my hand. "And now? Have you accepted it?" I took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, I feel authentic. I feel whole. Like all the disconnected pieces of who I am finally make sense. It was true. Every word was true. But the truth was also that living this authenticity in hiding had a price. And that price charged daily interest. It was on a Friday that we decided to risk it. My parents had gone out to dinner with friends and wouldn't be back until late. My younger brother was sleeping over at a friend's house. For the first time, we had the entire house to ourselves. "Let's do something different," he said, his eyes shining with that excitement that made me smile even on the hardest days. Something normal, like we could be, just us. We ordered food, put on a movie, sat on the living room couch, the same couch where days before we'd pretended to be just brothers watching some random show. But this time, there was no disguise. This time, when he rested his head on my shoulder, I didn't have to pretend that was normal between brothers. When our fingers intertwined, I didn't have to check if anyone was watching. For 3 hours, we lived in an alternate reality where we didn't need to hide. And then I heard the key turning in the lock. Panic is a physical sensation. It's not just mental. It's the heart that stops and then races. It's the air that vanishes from your lungs. It's the blood that drains from your face so fast you feel dizzy. "They came back early," I managed to whisper, already jumping up, creating distance between us as if that could erase the last few minutes. The door opened. My mother came in first, holding her purse, with a tired expression that quickly transformed into surprise at seeing us. "You're still up?" she said, taking off her shoes. My father came in right behind her, loosening his tie. "We were watching a movie," I replied, and I was impressed by how steady my voice came out despite the earthquake happening inside me. "It's good that you're getting along so well," my mother said, smiling. "I'm happy you welcomed him like this, son. I know it wasn't easy to suddenly have to share your space." The irony of those words cut me like a blade. "Let's go to bed," my father announced, already heading toward the hallway. "You two don't stay up too late either." We waited in absolute silence until we heard their bedroom door close. And then I looked at him. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly. "That was too close," he whispered. "I know." What if they had arrived 5 minutes earlier? What if they had seen us? "But they didn't," I interrupted, even knowing the relief was temporary. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't, and we both knew it. That night, there were no soft knocks on my door, no whispered conversations. We each stayed in our own room, processing how close we'd come to everything falling apart. The following weeks were an emotional roller coaster. For every stolen moment of happiness, there were 3 of anxiety. For every hidden kiss, there was an hour of paranoia afterward, mentally replaying whether anyone could have seen, heard, suspected. My older sister, who lived in another state and came to visit on weekends, started making comments. "You two are very, close," she said one Sunday while we were preparing lunch together. "It's funny. When Dad said he was getting married again and that you'd have a brother your age, I thought it would be a disaster. But you seem like best friends. We get along well, I replied, focusing on cutting the vegetables with surgical precision so I wouldn't have to look at her. It's more than that. Sometimes it seems like you have your own language, like you look at each other, and it seems like you understand exactly what the other is thinking. My heart raced. It's just, I don't know, chemistry. Some people connect. She watched me for a long moment, and I felt the weight of that gaze. Just be careful, she finally said, her voice lower. People can misinterpret when two guys are too close. You know how it is. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my sister's words echoing in my head. Did she suspect? Was she trying to warn me about something? Or was it just an innocent comment that my paranoia had amplified? My phone buzzed. A message from him. Are you awake? Yes. Can we talk? I waited 20 minutes to make sure everyone was asleep. I opened the door slowly, and there he was, leaning against the hallway wall, his face illuminated only by the dim light coming from the kitchen. We went into my room. We sat on the bed this time, not on the floor. He took my hand. I can't take this anymore, he whispered, and there were tears in his eyes. Living like you're not the most important person in my life. Pretending that what I feel for you is brotherly. Lying every time someone asks if I'm interested in anyone. I hate it. Me too, I admitted, feeling my own voice tremble. But what can we do? If we tell them, I know, believe me, I know. He wiped away his tears angrily. My dad would kick me out. Your mom would never look at you the same way again, and we'd be separated. So we keep going like this, I said, even though the words hurt coming out. We keep hiding. We keep being careful. For how long? He stared at me, and in those eyes was a question bigger than the words expressed. A year? 5 years? Forever? I had no answer, because the truth was I didn't know. I couldn't imagine a future where we could be open about what we were to each other. But I also couldn't imagine a future without him. We'll figure it out, was all I could say. Together, we'll figure out how to make this work. He leaned in and kissed me, slowly, with an intensity that carried all the fear, all the frustration, all the love we couldn't express during the day. I love you, he whispered against my lips, and it scares me as much as it makes me happy. I love you too, I replied, and it was the first time I'd said those words out loud. The first time I'd admitted it, not just to him, but to myself. In that moment, embraced in the darkness of my room, with the world sleeping around us, I made a silent decision. No matter how long it took, no matter how difficult it was, I would find a way for us to live this truth without having to hide it in the shadows. But before I could say anything, we heard a sound. Footsteps in the hallway. We separated instantly. He jumped up, eyes wide with panic. The handle of my door began to turn. Get in the closet, I whispered desperately, pushing him toward the wardrobe. The door opened. My mother was there, in her robe, with a worried expression. Son, are you okay? I heard voices. My heart was beating so hard I was sure she could hear it. I was on the phone, talking to a friend who's having problems. She stepped into the room, looking around. My eyes involuntarily went to the closet, where he was hiding, and I forced myself to look back at her. At this hour? It's 2 a.m. It's just... He was really bad. Anxiety attack. I couldn't leave him alone. She watched me for a long moment. A very long moment. And then she sighed. You're a good friend, but you need to sleep. You have class early tomorrow. I know. I'm wrapping up now. She nodded, but before leaving, she looked around the room once more, as if she were searching for something, as if she knew something was wrong, but couldn't identify what. Good night, son. Good night, Mom. The door closed. I waited. 10 seconds, 20, 30, until I heard her bedroom door close. He came out of the closet, his face even paler than before. She almost I know. This can't continue like this. I know. We looked at each other in the heavy silence of that early morning, and we both understood the same painful truth. We couldn't keep living this way. The lie was becoming unsustainable, the risks increasingly greater, and sooner or later, something would have to change. He went back to his room without saying anything more, and I stayed there, sitting on the bed, knowing we had reached a point of no return. Something needed to change. And then, it did. It happened on a random Tuesday. Mom came home early from work because she wasn't feeling good. We didn't know. He didn't know. We were on my bed completely lost in each other, not hearing footsteps in the hallway, not hearing the door open. I only knew when she screamed. That sound, the sound a mother makes when her entire world crashes, that's not something you forget. It's not rage. It's not sadness. It's shock and betrayal and total horror all at once. It's the sound of everything breaking. "What are you doing?" Her voice was shaking. He practically fell off the bed. I couldn't move. My heart was so loud in my ears. That's all I could think. This is it. This is over. She just stood there in the doorway, hand on her chest, gripping the frame like it was the only thing keeping her up. Her eyes went from me to him, back and forth, trying to make sense of it, looking for any explanation that wasn't the obvious one staring her in the face. "Mom, don't." She put her hand up before I could even finish. "Just don't. Your siblings. Step-siblings," he said, his voice steady in a way I wasn't expecting. "We don't share DNA. That's not what... You live under the same roof." Her voice got higher. "Your family. How could you do this? How could you do this to us?" The way she said that, like we had poisoned something sacred. Like what we felt was some kind of sickness, a betrayal, something wrong. I heard heavy feet coming down the stairs. My stepdad appeared, looking confused. "What is going on?" My mom turned to him, eyes full of tears. "They're together. Your son and my son. They're in a relationship." That word hit different than I expected. Like what we had was dirty, secret, shameful. Like it wasn't love at all. My stepdad's face shifted. First shock, then darker. Angry but controlled. Disappointed deep down. "Downstairs," he said to his son. "Now." Matthew looked at me for a second, and I saw it all in that look. Fear, regret, love, and underneath one question. What do we do? I had nothing. He left. I stood there shaking in my t-shirt and boxers, crushed under my mom's judgment. "How long?" she asked, voice cracking. "A few months," I said. "A few months." She said it like it tasted bad. "Lying to me for months, acting normal, while you, with your brother, in my house. I'm not hiding. You were hiding, because you knew this was wrong." There it was, the one thing I dreaded hearing, that what I felt was wrong. "It's not wrong," I said, and my voice surprised me. It was solid. I didn't pick this. I didn't choose to fall for him. But I did. And I can't change how I feel. "Can't you?" She stepped closer, eyes hard. "You can't just... stop? Just decide you're being crazy and end this before you ruin everything?" "Ruin everything?" My voice shook. "I'm telling the truth. I'm being myself for the first time ever. How is that ruining anything?" "Because you're family," she shouted, and it echoed off the walls. "It doesn't matter that you're not blood. In this house, in this family, you're brothers. And what you're doing is not acceptable." I felt tears coming, but I wouldn't let them show. Not to her. Not while she was telling me that who I am is broken and wrong. "Get dressed and get downstairs," she said, her voice cold. "We need to talk. All of us." She left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I dressed with shaking hands, could barely get my shirt buttoned. Every piece of clothing felt like it weighed 100 pounds. I knew what was coming. They were going to try to make me see why I was messed up. They'd demand I end it. I got downstairs and they were all there, My mom on the couch, arms crossed, eyes raw. My stepdad in the armchair, jaw locked. And Matthew at the window, staring out like he wanted to disappear. "Sit down," my mom said, pointing to the empty seat. I sat. Nobody said anything for a long time. My stepdad spoke first. His voice was controlled, but I could feel the rage underneath. "I believed in you," he said to Matthew. "I thought you'd respect this family. Respect boundaries. And you blew that up. We didn't do anything wrong." "Nothing wrong?" My stepdad laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. "You're in a relationship with your stepsister. That's sick." The word sick cut me deeper than any other. "It's not sick," I said, finding my voice. "We love each other. There's nothing sick about that." My mother shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand what you're saying. Love isn't enough. There are rules, there are boundaries, and you've crossed all of them." "Whose rules?" I asked. "Society's? People who don't even know us? Why do their opinions matter more than what I feel?" "Because they're right." My mother raised her voice again. "This isn't natural. It isn't right. And if you continue with this, you'll regret it. You'll lose friends. You'll lose respect. You'll lose this family." And there it was. The threat I knew was coming. "So you're saying if I don't break up with him, you'll kick me out?" My voice was calm now. Too calm. The calm before the storm. She hesitated. My stepfather looked at her, waiting. "I'm saying," she began, choosing her words carefully, "that if you choose to continue this relationship, you're choosing to turn your back on everything we've built as a family, and there will be consequences." I looked at him. He was looking at me, his eyes full of a pain that mirrored my own. And then he did something I'll never forget. He walked across the room and stood next to me. "Then I choose too," he said, looking straight at his dad. "I choose him, I choose us, and if that means you can't accept it, that's on you." The silence was total. My mom sobbed. My stepdad closed his eyes, shaking his head slow. "You don't know what you're doing," he said, and his voice broke. "You're kids. You think love solves everything, but it doesn't. Life is harder than that." "I know it's a mess," I said, "but I can't take it back. I can't pretend this doesn't exist. I can't play pretend just so you're comfortable." My mom looked at me, and something in her face just broke. Not rage, not judgment, just real sadness. "You were happy," she said quietly. "These past few months you looked happy. I thought finally you'd found something, that you were okay." "I was," I said, and tears started falling. For the first time ever, I was actually okay. Because of him. She shook her head, wiping her own eyes. "I need time," she said. "I need to process this. But right now I can't look at you two without feeling like I failed. As a mother. As a person." "You didn't fail," I said. "You just don't understand." "No," she agreed bitterly. "I don't." My stepfather stood up, placing his hand on my mother's shoulder. "I think you two should go to your rooms," he said. "We need to talk. Alone." We went upstairs in silence. In the hallway, before entering his room, he held my hand. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. "Telling the truth?" I looked at him, at the face I had learned to love, and felt a mixture of terror and relief. "I don't know," I admitted. "But at least now they know. We're not hiding anymore." He kissed my forehead. "We'll get through this. Together." But that night, lying in my bed, hearing the angry murmurs coming from the living room below, I wasn't so sure. Was it worth it? Is the truth always worth it? Or were there things better left in the dark? The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. My mother barely spoke to me. When she did, it was in monosyllables. Polite, distant, as if I were a stranger living in her house. My stepfather avoided eye contact. Family dinners became exercises in awkward silence, where the only sound was silverware scraping plates. And him. He tried to hold everything together, but I could see the weight crushing him too. The guilt of disappointing his father. The fear of losing the family he had just found when our parents got married. There were moments when I thought about giving up. Moments when the pain of rejection was so unbearable that I considered ending it all just to have my mother back, just to be part of the family again. But then he'd find me in the hallway, or touch my hand under the table during silent dinners, and I'd remember why all of this mattered. Because love wasn't something you just turned off for convenience. Because authenticity had a price, but living a lie cost even more. One night, 3 weeks after the revelation, I was sitting in the backyard, looking at the stars, when my mother came out. She didn't say anything at first. Just sat down next to me on the wooden bench my stepfather had built when they got married. We stayed there in silence for a long time. "I was young once," she finally said, her voice low. "I know what it's like to feel like nobody understands, that everyone's against you." I didn't respond. I wasn't sure where she was going. "But I've also been a mother for a long time," she continued. "And a mother's job is to protect you from pain, from judgment, from choices that could destroy your life." "Do you think he's going to destroy my life?" I asked gently. She sighed. "I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But I'm scared. Scared of what people will say, of what this will do to you two, to our family. What if," I said carefully, "what if it didn't destroy anything? What if it just made everything more real?" She looked at me for the first time in weeks, really looked. "Do you really love him?" It wasn't an accusation. It was a genuine question. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "More than I thought it was possible to love anyone." She closed her eyes, and I saw a tear roll down. "I don't know if I can accept this," she admitted. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you two and see anything but wrong." The words hurt, but at least they were honest. "But," she continued, opening her eyes, "you're my daughter. And maybe I need to learn that loving you means letting you make your own choices. Even if they're choices I don't understand." It wasn't acceptance. Not yet. But it was a crack. A small fissure in the wall she had built. "Thank you," I whispered. She stood up, placing her hand on my shoulder for a brief moment. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "This is still going to be complicated. For a long time." She went back inside, leaving me alone with the stars. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something I'd forgotten how to feel. Hope. I didn't know if my family would ever fully accept us. I didn't know if the love we felt would be strong enough to overcome all the obstacles still to come. But I knew one thing, with absolute certainty. I couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't live hiding who I really was. Because the truth, however painful, was the only thing that made me feel alive. 3 months had passed since that night. 3 months since I chose my happiness. Since I said yes to the truth and no to the lie that was suffocating me. Life changed. Of course it changed. Not dramatically, not the way movies show it, but in a real way, with its imperfections and small victories. I kept living in my 6th-floor apartment. Those 6 flights of stairs that once represented the weight of my lie were now just stairs. Funny how a symbol can lose its power when you stop running. He would visit me 3-4 times a week. At first, I still looked through the peephole before opening the door, checking if there was anyone in the hallway. Old habits die hard. But after a few weeks, something changed. One afternoon, we were going down the stairs together to get food, and I realized I wasn't calculating every movement, wasn't measuring the distance between our bodies, wasn't rehearsing explanations in case we ran into someone I knew. Our shoulders touched naturally as we went down, and I didn't pull away. It was a small moment, insignificant to anyone else, but to me it was enormous. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't performing heterosexuality. I was just being. When we reached the sidewalk, he held my hand. For 2, maybe 3 seconds. An elderly woman passed by us, looked, and kept walking as if nothing had happened. The sky didn't fall. The world didn't end. Life, simply, went on. I laughed out loud, right there on the sidewalk, holding his hand for a few more seconds before letting go. He looked at me confused, but smiling. "What is it?" "Nothing," I replied. "Everything." Things with my family were more complicated. Reality rarely delivers perfect endings. My father still wasn't speaking to me. 2 weeks after that night, I received a message from my mother. "Your father needs time." Time. As if time could cure prejudice. As if waiting could transform disgust into acceptance. But my younger sister called me a week after the revelation. She cried on the phone for 5 minutes before she could speak. "I didn't know you were suffering so much," she said between sobs. I'm sorry for never asking, for never noticing." "You couldn't have known," I replied, my voice also breaking. "I hid it very well, but I should have noticed. You're my brother." We talked for 2 hours. She told me she had a lesbian friend in college, that she had never really understood these things. But now it made sense. Now she understood it wasn't about understanding. It was about loving. "Can I meet him?" she asked, near the end of the call. "Your boyfriend." The word sounded strange, then natural, then perfect. "You can," I said, "whenever you want." They met 2 weeks later at a small cafe downtown. I was more nervous than ever, hands sweating, heart racing. But my sister arrived, hugged us both, and ordered a cappuccino as if this were the most normal thing in the world. Because it was. It should have always been. We talked about work, about her college, about a movie she had watched. Normal things, mundane, wonderfully ordinary. As we were leaving, she hugged me tight and whispered in my ear, "You seem happy, truly happy. I'd never seen you like this before." Those words stayed with me for days. Because she was right. I had never really been happy before. I had been functional. I had been acceptable. I had been approved. But happy? Never. My mother was harder. She oscillated between acceptance and denial, between hesitant hugs and silences that lasted too long. One day she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was alone, grading papers at the kitchen table. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice small. I made coffee. We sat in silence for long minutes, the steam rising from the cups between us like an invisible barrier. "Your father won't change his mind," she finally said. "You need to know that." I nodded. I already knew. "But She paused, her eyes welling up. "I don't want to lose my son. I've already lost too much time not truly knowing you. I don't want to lose any more." She didn't say she fully accepted it. She didn't say she understood. She didn't pretend everything was okay. But she said, "I love you, and I'm going to try. Every day, I'm going to try." And that was enough. Because love isn't perfection. Love is effort. It's choosing to keep trying even when it's hard, even when your beliefs are challenged, even when the path isn't clear. We cried together there, in my kitchen, and something healed. Not everything, but something. 3 months after that night, I was in a different place. Not geographically, I still lived in the same apartment, still taught at the same school, still climbed the same 6 flights of stairs. But internally, I was a different person. I had stopped calculating every word before speaking. I had stopped measuring the masculinity of my laugh. I had stopped monitoring where my eyes landed, how I crossed my legs, what pronouns I used when talking about past relationships. I had stopped living in fear of being discovered, because there was nothing left to discover. I was discovered, exposed, vulnerable, and alive. More alive than ever. He was cooking in my apartment one night when I had this realization. I watched his natural movements through the kitchen, the way he stirred the sauce humming softly, how he smiled when he caught me watching. "You know I love you, right?" I said suddenly. He turned around, spoon still in hand, surprised by the declaration without context. "I know," he replied, that smile that always disarms me. "But it's good to hear it anyway. I used to be so afraid of being seen, I continued, standing up and walking over to him. That someone would look at me and just know, as if being gay were a contagious disease, something that stained you just by existing. He set his spoon aside, giving me his full attention. "And now?" he asked softly. "Now I refuse to hide. I refuse to shrink who I am to fit into other people's comfort. Because hiding isn't living, it's just surviving. And I'm tired of just surviving." He pulled me into an embrace, and we stood there, in the middle of my kitchen, while the sauce simmered on the stove and the future unfolded before us. It wasn't perfect. My father still wasn't speaking to me. Some coworkers acted different after the news spread because it always spreads. Always. Some neighbors avoided my gaze in the elevator. But I had chosen authenticity. And authenticity has a price. It always does. The difference is that now I knew it was worth paying that price. Because the alternative, living a lie, performing an acceptable version of myself, suffocating who I really was, that alternative had a much higher price. And I'd already paid that price for far too long. So here I am, 3 months after choosing truth. Still imperfect, still navigating consequences, still learning to exist without masks, but also more whole than I've ever been. If this story hits home, if you're living a double life, acting out a version of yourself while your real self suffocates inside, I'm not going to lie and say it's simple. That's BS. I'm not going to promise everyone will get it. They won't. I'm not going to pretend there won't be real costs. There will be. But I will say this, your truth matters. Being yourself matters. You matter. And hiding isn't living. It's just existing in the gap between who you really are and who they need you to be. That gap is brutal, lonely, crushing. You deserve better. You deserve to be fully seen. No filter, no act, no mask. Love can be hard. Truth can be messy. Being yourself can be uncomfortable. But pretending isn't living, and you deserve to actually live. I had to tell this. I needed someone to understand. And now you do. If this resonated, if you have your own story about finding yourself, share it below. Your story matters. Your truth needs to be shared too. Maybe if we keep talking, we can build a world where nobody has to carry the weight of a lie up 6 flights of stairs, where love is just love, where being true is just being true, where living is finally just living.